What can I say? It's been a long time coming. Guys, we have been waiting a long time to receive official news, to finally figure out exactly what's going to happen with Jon Jones. All right, think about it. The last time we saw this man in the octagon was February of 2020. 3 years ago, we'll call it. That's a long time. Man, that's a long time for a man who is arguably in his prime. He was 32 years old at the time. A man who is basically considered, almost unquestionably, basically universally, the greatest of all time. The best fighter that the UFC has ever seen, and that's saying a lot. We've seen the likes of Anderson Silva. We've seen GSP. We've seen incredibly talented fighters over the years. And we're at a point right now where basically everybody will nod their head and tip their head to Jon Jones when we're talking about who is the best to ever do it. Dominated the light heavyweight division, right? Came out and was just basically a legend killer in the way that he was just tearing through folks. But make no mistake about it, when we look at the last two fights that he put on, Thiago Santos and Dominic Reyes. Now, he won those fights. Split decision in the Thiago Santos fight. Unanimous decision against Dominic Reyes. But let's be honest with each other. Was that the Jon Jones that we're used to? Was that the Jon Jones that we have become accustomed to seeing over the years? Was that the dominant performance, the creativity, the master of timing and range? The guy who went out there and just would bite down on his mouthpiece if need be and make things happen? Was that the Jon Jones that we were used to seeing? I would say it wasn't. I would say it was a man who was incredibly talented, a man who found a way to win. Some would make the argument that maybe he didn't deserve to win both of those fights. Maybe there's a small contingent who think that split decision should have went to Thiago Santos instead of him. I always like to think, what would have happened if Thiago Santos wouldn't have hurt his leg the way he did in that first round? But the fight game is packed with all kinds of what ifs, though, right? That's not what we're here to talk about. We're just talking about the performance that we saw Jon Jones put on. And he steps away, right? And he steps away. It there's of course of course he's not just going to step away. Of course he's staying on Twitter. Of course he's trying to keep the camera in his face as much as possible, constantly teasing us, constantly trying to see what's going on. So when we see a guy like Daniel Cormier out there moving up, challenging for the heavyweight belt, Jon Jones has to chime in. Oh, is he going to be able to do it? He's been really dominant before. Is he going to be able to go in against a guy like Stipe and make it happen? He does. Then all of a sudden we go out and we see Francis Ngannou win the belt. This dude who is like got a legendary background, legendary story, working over in the sand mines, as though this dude's like a mythological character like Conan the Barbarian, and he comes over and he's just as raw as you can possibly imagine when it comes to technique and fight skills and all of these different things. Doesn't even matter, tearing through the division. The man has got power that you write home about. The man has got power that you talk about for generations. The man's got the type of power that we'll talk about for quite some time. You know, we've nothing captivates like that legendary power. Nothing just captivates people like being able to go out there and separate people from their senses with just one shot. To be down. Imagine being down in a baseball game, 100-0, and then in the bottom of the ninth, with one hit, you score 101 runs. You're losing the football game 55-0. 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and one play later, you're up 62-55, and you win the game, right? Because that's the type of thing that you can do with this legendary power. That's the type of thing that you can do when you can go out there and land one shot and smoke a guy. From the opening bell to the closing bell, at any point, you're incredibly dangerous. A man has to be on his game from start to finish. And we've seen it happen before, right? The most recent example that we could see with a guy with incredible power and what he can do late in the fight was Ciryl Gane versus Alex Paella. Man, that left hook came in so short, so crisp. Caught Ciryl Gane, took the belt from him. Izzy was winning that fight, but Izzy did not win the fight. That's what can happen when you got the great power, right? And that's the kind of just captivating power that we saw from Francis Ngannou. But lo and behold, man, one thing led to another. We heard the argument from him that we've heard from everybody forever, which is that he's just not getting paid enough. He feels like, I don't know the details, right? I mean, but it's so funny. You saw this leak come out before it was officially announced that it was going to be Jon Jones versus Ciryl Gane, UFC 285. Wow. And that kind of took us by surprise. That shocked us a little bit because we were expecting to see Jon Jones fight Francis Ngannou. Now, all of a sudden, we see this leak and there's rumors. Is it real? Is it not? Was that supposed to come out? Was it on purpose? What's going on here exactly? Then all of a sudden, we hear Jon Jones talk. Jon Jones is like, yeah, I'm out here. I'm training with Henry Cejudo. I've been working with him for a lot. I'm just a short ways away from my title fight at heavyweight. It's going to be against Ciryl Gane. And very shortly after that, we hear Uncle Dana himself, the boss man, come out and confirms everything. Confirms it all. Yeah, they weren't supposed to leak that. Yeah, that was unintentional. That's why we pulled it down, but it is true. UFC 285, we're going to see Ciryl Gane versus Jon Jones, and it's going to be for the official heavyweight championship of the world. Man, that's something else. What a fight, right? And in the same thing, in the same breath, he's got to tell us what happened with Francis Ngannou, because make no mistake about it, that's the man that we know as the official heavyweight champion of the UFC. And he says, look, we've been talking to Ngannou for 2 years now. We've been constantly trying to make these deals and go back and forth. We offered him a deal that was going to make him the richest or the highest paid heavyweight in UFC history. We offered him a deal that's going to make him the highest paid heavyweight in UFC history. Pay him even more than Brock Lesnar. And Ngannou said he didn't want it. Said, I'm going to walk away from it, right? Let's just take Dana at his word and say that's really what the deal was. Nevertheless, he said Francis Ngannou thinks that he can go and fight lesser competition and earn more money. He does not want to be here fighting the best in the world for what we're going to pay him. Everybody knows what Jon Jones is. Everybody knows what Jon Jones can do. We told him that's what the fight was going to be. He walks away from it, tells us he can make more money. Look, we're giving up all our rights. We're giving up our right to match. He can go out there. He can do whatever he wants, completely a free agent. On the one hand, man, what a tragedy. What a tragedy that we don't get to see a man like Francis Ngannou compete in the octagon anymore. We don't get to see Francis Ngannou continue to compete amongst the best MMA fighters in the world. Because that's what I think you got in the UFC. Whether he's fighting Jon Jones, whether he gets a rematch against Ciryl Gane, no matter what the case may be, some other guy that comes up and fights for it, whether right Blades or Pavlovich or whoever the case, we don't get to see that anymore. That captivating, legendary power. As he continues to develop, make a mistake about it, his game was evolving. We saw the grappling that he did to win the belt against Stipe. We saw the grappling that he did against Ciryl Gane. The man wasn't resting on his laurels. He wasn't just sitting back as a home run hitter. His game was continuing to improve and evolve. So I wish him the best. I hope that he earns, that Dana White was telling the truth in the sense that he gets to go and earn more money. I certainly don't want to see him against lesser competition because I want to see the best fight the best, and I want to see how that turns out. These are historical things, man. Fights need to happen so that we get to see how it really plays out and how all these things go. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're going to get that, at least for the time being, with Francis Ngannou. So it's true, though. We get Jon Jones versus Ciryl Gane. And man, that is an awesome fight in and of itself. I don't mean to sell it short at all just because we don't get to see Ngannou, man. Jon Jones and Ciryl Gane. Two incredibly talented men. Incredibly talented. Now let's just take a quick look at it here, right? Just a little bit of a first thoughts. I'll break it down more as time goes on. But my first thought is that, make no mistake about it, I think this is going to be a more difficult fight for Jon Jones than if he would have fought Ngannou. Jon Jones has spoken about Ngannou in the past. I thought he had a decent read on him, right? At least when he was speaking. Like I said, Ngannou was an evolving figure, evolving fighter, constantly getting better, improving his craft. But when Jon Jones spoke about him, he said, look, of course we need to worry about the power. The guy's got legendary power. Need to be on the lookout for that. Do I need to worry about it all 5 rounds? Probably not. Probably only need to worry about it really, truly for the first round or two. If I can avoid it at that point, I don't think I'll have to worry about it quite as much. Don't think he'll be able to catch me and get me with that one and done. Okay, maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. We've seen Ngannou have cardio issues in the past. Does he carry the power that late? I think he does, but maybe Jon's telling the truth on that one. But he says, I think I can wrestle him. I think I've got the cardio. I think I've got the striking match. I think I've got the reach and the ring IQ and all these things. And he's evaluating him and breaking him down. I think for a long time, years, I think that Jon Jones figured he was going to fight for the heavyweight championship and that it was going to be against Francis Ngannou. And now all of a sudden he gets thrown this little wrinkle. Now all of a sudden he gets thrown this little curveball at the end. And it's against a guy who couldn't be more different. It's a guy in Ciryl Gane who's all about speed, who's all about footwork, agility, technique, all about changing up his shots. Sometimes I go hard, sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's fast. Sometimes I'll just reach out there and casually touch you with it. Uses a lot of kicks, low kicks, kicks to the body, spinning kicks, wheel kicks. We saw him land a wheel kick against Francis Ngannou. think Francis Ngannou was out there throwing any wheel kicks? You think that's what he's been training lately? After after the issues with his knees, now all of a sudden he's going out there and he's going to have some picture perfect front teep kick? Highly doubt it, right? Highly doubt it. So what we see in Ciryl Gane is an opponent that's completely different. Now, maybe Jon figured in the back of his mind, he thought about Ciryl Gane at times, figured there would be a point when they met, but I don't believe for 1 minute that he thought that this was going to be his comeback fight 3 years out of the game fighting Ciryl Gane. When we think about Jon Jones, when we think about his mastery and why we consider him the GOAT and why he's so good, I think the first thing that we have to talk about is his ring IQ. Second thing we have to talk about is his mastery of distance. That's the thing. We can talk about his long arms and say that that aids him. Great. Long arms make a big difference in the sense that it helps you with the reach. But if you don't know how to use it, it doesn't mean anything. It's not the tallest guy in the world or the guy with the longest arms that's the best fighter. It's never been that way. It's the guy who's the best fighter that's the best fighter. Skills pay the bills. It's the man who knows how to go in there and execute. So Jon does have a physical advantage when it comes to having this long reach. But more importantly, it's that he knows how to use it. He knows how to go in there and get the job done. That mastery of distance, when he wants to keep guys on the outside, when he wants to walk guys down and close the distance on them, when he wants to get inside, when he wants to feint and then switch to a takedown. It's the mastery of distance that I think sets up everything else that he does. From there, we get the creativity. From there, we get the relentlessness. From there, we get the elbow strikes. From there, we get the takedowns that leads to just the dominant ground and pound. It's the physical strength that people have spoken about that aids all of these things. Right? There's just so much going on there. Now, when we look at Ciryl Gane, I think we have to be honest with each other. We're going to be talking about a guy who's maybe not as long as Jon, but he's just as tall. Naturally, I think he's a much bigger guy. Yeah, it's true. Jon Jones has just been bulking up ridiculous, putting on all this crazy strength and size and all this time off, working with guys like Stan Efforting and deadlifting out the door and power lifting the gym and whatever else this man out there may be doing. We see the pictures, we see the films, man. We see all the weight that he's putting out. We see how big he's going to be. But that's not his natural size. Ciryl Gane is a naturally bigger man. Is he going to be stronger? I would make the argument that Jon's going to be stronger. Make no doubt about it. If Ciryl Gane and Jon Jones got into a weightlifting competition, a powerlifting match, Jon Jones wins that, I believe. 100%. He is a more powerful man. He's a stronger man. Doesn't mean he's going to have the more powerful striking. There's a difference. You can look at the strongest man in the world. That's not going to be the hardest puncher in the world. You can look at a guy who looks skinny like Tommy Hearns, and he'll take your head off with that right hand. There's more, far more, to having a hard punch than being physically strong. So although I believe Jon Jones will be stronger, he'll be able to use that strength in the clinch. He'll be able to use that strength in grappling situations. He'll be able to use it should he get to the ground. I don't think he's going to have the harder punch. I think Ciryl Gane's going to probably be the strongest man he's ever faced. I think Ciryl Gane's going to by far have the best footwork. Man, he's so quick. He's so smooth. Fights out of each stance. The lateral movement that he can have. The way that he shoots those feints in his attempt to control the distance. Because he also is a master of controlling the distance. The feints that he uses, how he slips in and out, how he moves to the side, the angles that he works. Very crisp jabs. Very good kicking. We saw what Thiago Santos' kicks did to Jon. What's Ciryl Gane's kicks going to do? We've never seen somebody who can control the distance like Ciryl Gane go up against Jon. We've seen one man who was as big as Jon. That was Alexander Gustafsson. And look at what happened in their first fight. Dude, I think Ciryl Gane is going to present some challenges that are going to be incredibly unique that Jon's going to find very difficult. And he's got to solve those inside of 5 rounds. And oh, by the way, he can go out there and do all the cardio he wants, but one of the things that I'm going to be very interested in seeing is just how that cardio holds up over the course of 5 rounds. Man, Ciryl Gane can make it go, man. He's got good cardio. He's not going to get tired. Jon Jones is putting on far more weight and fighting with far more weight than he's ever fought with in the past. And you can say whatever you want about training. Training's different than when you're under the lights. Particularly if when you're under those lights, you get caught with a nasty shot. You start to get worried. You start to go into survival mode, wondering about what's going to happen. You start to get panicked. Your back gets tight. Your breathing gets a little bit more shallow. And you've got an extra 50, 60 pounds of muscle on here, sucking that oxygen from you. It's a lot easier to get fatigued. Look at the history of guys moving up in weight classes. It's not uncommon at all for the smaller man moving up, now carrying more weight and muscle, to become fatigued during that fight. Very natural occurrence, very common. I'll be interested to see what happens with Jon. Now, on the flip side of that, we saw when Ciryl Gane lost to Francis Ngannou, and he didn't lose because of the striking. He didn't lose because he got caught and got his head taken off. He lost because of the grappling. Francis Ngannou went out there and switched it up, shows that he's got some grappling. He took Ciryl Gane down. He was able to control some positions. That's what won him those rounds. That's what ended up making him victorious in the fight. So if you think, if Francis Ngannou can go out there and out-grapple Ciryl Gane to the point of being able to win the fight, well, of course Jon Jones is going to be able to do it. Jon Jones is a credentialed wrestler, and Ngannou wasn't. Jon Jones is probably going to be stronger than Ngannou was in that fight. Think about that for a minute. Think about that for a minute. Jon Jones is the most likely going to be stronger, physically stronger. I can lift more weight. I can grab more things, stronger in more positions, just more horsepower than Francis Ngannou did when he fought Gane. So if Ngannou was able to go out there and dominate him like that, what leads you to believe that Jon Jones won't? Why won't he go out there, mix it up just a little bit on the feet, but ultimately try to make this a grappling match as early and as often as possible? Maybe he does. But I also believe that Ciryl Gane's gotten better since that fight with Ngannou. He knew what it was like to get out grappled. He knew what that felt like. He knows that he's missing this one little key ingredient before he's going to be able to grasp the heavyweight belt that he wants. I'm sure he's been working on it. I'm sure Jon Jones has been working on it. Man, and then you've got this added wrinkle of Jon Jones training with Henry Cejudo a little bit. Cejudo possibly cornering him. I mean, dude, I'm a huge fan of Henry Cejudo. I think he's got an incredibly high ring IQ. I think he's an incredibly accomplished fighter. You see some of these fighters that he's working with now, whether it's Figueiredo, whether it's Zhang Weili, whatever the case may be, these people that he's working with, man, they're improving. They're doing better. He knows how to mix things up. I love that team out there. Jon's going to come in prepared. I think they're going to be able to have a very accurate breakdown of Ciryl Gane's game. The strengths, the weaknesses, what he presents, all the different wrinkles. Man, this is going to be an awesome fight. UFC 285, Jon Jones versus Ciryl Gane for the heavyweight belt. Dude, I couldn't be more excited. Couldn't be more excited for this one. What do you guys think is going to happen? Are you as excited as I am? Do you think Jon's going to come in as the favorite? I haven't even looked. Are the odds makers even putting the odds out, the lines out yet? Let me know what you guys think.